Hi everyone, my name is Nilu and I'm the dietitian with Back in Motion. So today's presentation is about how to read nutrition labels. So do you regularly read food labels? Just something to think about. When you look at a food label in the grocery store, are you looking at it and what are you looking at when you see the label? So we'll go through that in more detail today. So the first thing is the serving size. So there's so much information on nutrition labels, it's hard to know what to look for, what not to look for. So start with the serving size. So the label will say the serving size. For example, it might say on cereal, the serving size is half a cup. On some granolas, I know it says a third of a cup. So it's important to compare that to what you would usually eat. Most people don't eat only half a cup of cereal. So the nutrition facts applies to that serving size. So if it says half a cup as a serving size and you eat 2 cups, then you would need to multiply that amount and know that you're getting 4 times the calories, the fat, and other nutrients that are listed on that label. So here's a sample of what a nutrition facts label would look like. So first thing is start with the serving size, then look at the calories just to get an idea. It's not the most important thing, but it's good to know. The percent daily value, so that's important as a way of comparing one food to another. For example, 5% or less is considered low, 20% or more is very high. For example, if you're looking at canned soups, 5% or less would be a low sodium, 20% or more would be a very high sodium soup. Then limiting these nutrients, you want to try to limit things like the saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, and sodium, and getting more of these nutrients, the fiber, and certain vitamins and minerals. So when we compare these two cereals, which one has the most realistic serving size? So you can see this one cereal on the left has a serving size of 21 biscuits. I think that's a mini wheats type of a cereal. So that's more realistic. That's probably a serving we would eat. Whereas the other one, this is a more dense type of a granola cereal. The serving size is 3/4 of a cup. So might not be the amount we have. We might be having a little more. So just to note, you might need to multiply that by 1.5 or by 2, depending how much you're having. Other nutrition labels here. So this one is a little bit deceiving because it's telling you that this is per 1 muffin, but then it's not telling you that that's when it's not prepared. So it's important to look at the labels to see, is this when the product is prepared or when it hasn't yet been prepared? Another thing to look for, ingredient lists. Look at the number of ingredients on the list. My general rule of thumb is if there's a list of 20 ingredients on it or more, half of which you can't pronounce, then it's best not to choose that product. It's likely a highly processed product. So try to choose foods with a shorter ingredient list and keep in mind that the ingredients are listed in order of how much of each ingredient is in the product by weight. So for example, if your cereal has sugar as the first ingredient in the list of ingredients, then that means it has more sugar than any other ingredient. So for example, this is a protein bar. So on the label, it's labeled as an organic, vegan protein bar, but the first ingredient we're seeing is chocolate and sugar, and then cocoa butter, milk, fat. So that means more than any of these other ingredients, which some of them are quite nutritious near the end. You see the cranberries and sunflower seeds, but the very first one is actually chocolate and sugar. So more comparable to a chocolate bar. Whereas this one, the ingredients are quite simple. So the first ingredient is almonds. So more than any other ingredient, this bar has almonds. So that's a good sign. And then when you're looking at the label, very few ingredients, 5 or 6 ingredients, not too many added preservatives. And then daily value. So on the nutrition facts, you'll also see the percent daily value. So that lets you know how that food fits into your daily meal plan. So percent daily value is for the entire day. Keep that in mind, not just for one meal. So if it's telling you that there's 20% daily value of sodium in this product, then that gives you an idea of, okay, this can of soup provides me with 20% of the sodium that is my maximum in a day. So low is 5% or less. High is 20% or more. And then again, you want to aim for foods that are low in saturated fat, low in trans fat, cholesterol, and sodium, but foods that are high in vitamins, minerals, and fiber. So for example, if you have high blood pressure, aim for foods that are very low daily value for sodium, ideally 5% or less. So here's an example of some soups. And so if you're someone with high blood pressure, you're looking for a soup with a lower sodium content, look at these two and see which one would be the best choice. So we're looking at the milligrams of sodium and then the percent daily value. So that's the one that you want it to be 5% or less. So we look at the soup on the left, we see it's 28% daily value. The one on the right is 14%. So even though it's not 5% or less, if you're choosing between these two, it's best just to choose the one with the lowest percentage. So the 14% would be a better choice. And what else to look for on a label? So the most important things are sugar and fiber. So sugar, look for products that have 10 grams of sugar per serving or less. And this would apply to grain products like cereals, granola bars, as well as flavored yogurts and milks. For example, if you're choosing vanilla almond milk, they tend to be quite high in sugar, some of them 20 or 30 grams. And then fiber, so look for products that have at least 3 grams of fiber per serving. So this would apply to foods like granola bars, crackers, bread, all of those grain products. And try as much as you can to choose plain over sweetened. So for example, yogurt. Try to choose plain yogurt as much as you can. That way you're avoiding the added sugars. You can add maybe a bit of cinnamon or a touch of brown sugar to add flavor, and that way you're not adding as much sugar as they would add. And then I'm going to show you a couple of granola bars and you can see how much sugar is in them. So these ones, there's 21 grams, which is quite high. And you compare them. So for example, the first one has 4 grams of fiber, which is good. The sugar is 5 grams, which is quite low. So that's a healthy choice. Whereas the oatmeal to go, it sounds a little deceiving. It sounds like it's a healthy choice. It's an oatmeal bar, but you look at the sugar and it's quite high, 21 grams. So it's important to read the nutrition facts panel for added sugar. So sugar can be disguised under many different names. It can be called fructose, high fructose corn syrup, evaporated cane juice, simple syrup, honey, and sometimes it'll just say fruit juice concentrate. Also thickeners and fillers, so modified cornstarch can be used as a thickener, a stabilizer. In yogurt, it's often used to improve the texture and creaminess of foods. Other common thickeners or fillers could be things like maltodextrin, locust bean gum, carob bean gum, gelatin, and then different preservatives. So for example, potassium sorbate is a very commonly used preservative that's used in yogurt, and mainly it's used to inhibit mold, yeasts, and certain bacteria. And citric acid, that's an organic acid that exists naturally in citrus fruits, and it's just a natural preservative and flavor additive. So when you see that on a label, it's not necessarily an artificial preservative, it's more an organic acid that's helping as a natural preservative. So flavors, sodium citrate you might see on the label, that's more to balance the acidity of yogurt. Malic acid can be added to give candies a tart flavor. So some labels are misleading. For example, you might see chips that say there's no cholesterol. You might think, oh, that's a healthy choice. But cholesterol is a fatty substance that's only found in animal products. So potatoes, oil, and salt will never have cholesterol. So it's very deceiving when you see labels like that. It's not as bad as sometimes seeing bottled water that's labeled non-GMO, gluten-free, and kosher. And that does exist. That has been labeled somewhere in the world. So it's a very deceiving type of a label. And companies sometimes advertise what's not in their foods compared to what's in their food. So it's natural for shoppers to assume if a food does not contain something, then that's a good thing. So it's really important to look for what is in the food compared to what's not in the food when you're looking at labels. This is another somewhat misleading label. So it's saying these potato chips are cholesterol-free, pure peanut oil. But even though they're cholesterol-free, which all potato chips would be because they're not coming from an animal product, it's still full of saturated fat. And saturated fat is even more harmful for us in some ways than other types of fat. Another misleading label, so when you're looking at some breads, you might see that it's whole grain bread, or a multi-grain bread might be labeled in a way that it's multi-seed bread. And multi just means many types of grains, which may or may not be whole. So same with 12-grain bread. It means that there's 12 types of grains in it, but they may or may not be refined. So fake no added sugar claims. So this is a big one in the beverage world, where juice contains as much sugar as soft drinks can claim no sugar added. So for example, 8 ounces of apple juice and 8 ounces of cola both have 6 teaspoons of sugar. So it doesn't matter if it's natural or added sugar. If you're drinking it in large quantities, it does provide the same amount of sugar. There was actually a lawsuit against a juice company where they featured the no added sugar statement, and they've now changed that because they've realized it's not a low calorie food, and it's important for consumers to know that. So food and nutrition labels, are they on all packaged foods? Are they on fruits and vegetables? So they're included on almost all packaged food products, except for fresh fruits like fresh vegetables and fruit. It's not mandatory to be labeled on those. So would you find a food label on an apple? No, it's not mandatory. So are all foods required to have a label? So there's other foods besides fruits and vegetables that aren't. So raw meat, poultry, fish, and seafood, they're not required to have a label. Foods prepared at a store, like a bakery item, sausages and salads in the deli, at Safeway or a different grocery store, they're not mandatory. Foods that contain very few nutrients, like tea, coffee, spices, they're not mandatory. Alcohol, and restaurants and food service businesses, they're not required to have it attached to their products. A lot of restaurants will have their nutrition information posted online for their menus, but not specifically for each ingredient. So the bottom line, so the information on the food label is there to help us make informed decisions about the foods we eat. But this is also to be used in combination with Canada's Food Guide and other information that that can help you make informed choices on healthy eating. So when in doubt, you can always book a session with me as your dietitian, and I can help guide you along your way.